Okay, it is Wednesday, February 19th. It is freezing here in Queens, New York. That being said, we have a ton of baseball topics to get to today. We had some Four Nation injury updates heading into the championship game. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, so yesterday morning, we got news that we were anticipating. We were going to get a decision. We were going to get one way or another on one matter. And that matter directly impacts free agency 2026. I know we just hit spring training 2025, but we already have the tables getting set for next offseason. And this is for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Initially, Vladdy gave the Blue Jays a deadline to reach an extension. He wanted it to be done. He wanted it to be in the past. He didn't want to think about it come spring training. So it was a self-imposed deadline of midnight Monday night into Tuesday morning when the full group of players needed to report to Blue Jays camp. And after the Blue Jays missed out on Juan Soto, the general thought was that the Blue Jays would allocate those funds to re-signing Vladdy. That they were going to make it their priority to re-sign their homegrown talent. Yesterday morning, it was reported and later confirmed that the Blue Jays and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. were unable to reach an extension. And when reporters asked Vladdy yesterday morning whether they came close, he flat out said no. And so now we officially have the big fish for next year's free agent class. Yesterday morning, John Heyman tweeted out that the most likely destinations are 1. The Boston Red Sox, 2. The New York Mets, and 3. The New York Yankees. Bob Nightingale then reported that Vladdy has made it clear that his preferred destination is the Boston Red Sox. That being said, throughout the day, Buster Olney and Jeff Passan made it seem like the Mets will go all in for Vladdy. And like Jeff Passan said, this was straight from his mouth. He said it on Bart and Carlin on ESPN New York. He said, if the New York Mets really, really want him, they will get him. But the Red Sox are apparently his preferred destination. It's always been felt like that was the team for him. The fit was right. It just always seemed like Vladdy fit perfectly on the Red Sox. What's fascinating about that is their abundance of infielders. There has already been controversy this offseason, this spring training, about Rafael Devers saying he's playing third base after they just signed Alex Bregman. So if Alex Bregman opts back in and Devers won't move to DH and they hold on to top prospect Tristan Casas, however you pronounce his name, he plays first base, then there's no place for Vladdy. Something would have to budge. But for Vladdy, for a player like Vladdy, you make it budge. You figure out a way to make it work for a player like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., whether you're convincing him to play to bat DH, whether you sit Devers down and you say, listen, we can add a player like this, but you have to be a little flexible here. Or maybe Bregman decides he's going to flip around positionally. You could flip how do you pronounce his name? Casas? You could flip him for other assets. That's I think the most obvious one, and probably what makes the most sense. You getting a guy like Vladdy is essentially like signing a prospect. And when you do something like that, when you sign a player in his age 26 season, you could then start thinking about trading away those who are in the path for that position. So those who are in the path in the Red Sox organization to play first base, you can start thinking about moving those players for other assets that you need, for other positional needs. So if you need starting pitching, go out and trade him for a starting pitcher. Go out and trade Tristan Casas for a starting pitcher. I am butchering that name. I know I am. Casas? I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to look that up. I should have known that going into this. Bregman could opt out. That can make things easier. They could trade Rafael Devers. They've shown that they will trade their star players. See Mookie Betts. Not so crazy, not out of the realm of possibility. When you have a guy who's demanding that he play a certain position, maybe the Red Sox trade Rafael Devers to make room for Vladdy on their roster. And as I said, the New York Mets, are supposedly also all in on bringing him in. Now, Heyman said it depends on if Pete Alonso opts out in the second year of his contract. I call BS on this. They're going to let 1 year of Pete Alonso affect the next 11 of Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? If the Mets want Vladdy, they will go after him regardless of what Pete Alonso does. It's a different story as to whether he actually would sign there. That's the real question. I don't think it's a question of, well, if Pete Alonso doesn't opt out, then maybe they're not going. No, they'll make it work for 1 year. The 1 year Pete has on his deal. They'll make it work. They'll figure something out. One of them will DH. I mean, that's just such a dumb take. That was what John Heyman said. Tell me that you don't have a pulse on this, what's happened this offseason, without telling me you don't have a pulse on what's happened this offseason. Come on, be better than that. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. It's going to be based on if Pete Alonso opts back into his contract for 1 year. The next 11 for Vladdy is going to be dependent on if Pete Alonso opts in for 1. Come on now. The next team here to think about is the Yankees. Look, they signed Paul Goldschmidt to play first base this season, but let's be real. This here, the New York Yankees, this is the best fit for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They have the position open. Giancarlo Stanton is signed for 3 more seasons. So that will be 2 going into next season. It's actually a perfect fit. That Vladdy plays first base until he cannot anymore. And at that point, he can slide right into the DH. They have going into next season, they have first base open, and they have the DH spot open 2 years later. As well as a need to fill Juan Soto's shoes. Imagine that lineup. Judge and Vladdy. Jeez, that would be absurd. And speaking of Juan Soto, we just saw the battle that took place with him. This could be Juan Soto 2.0. Remember, the 3 finalists, three of the finalists for Juan Soto were the Mets, the Yankees, and the Red Sox. So if we're talking about early favorites to go after him, those 3 teams are up there. And now there was one thing that crept into my mind yesterday. I haven't heard so many people bring this team up. But we are naive if we discount the Dodgers in all of this. I understand all is stacked against them, right? They have first base locked in for another couple of years with Freddie Freeman. They have DH locked in for a long time without Shohei Ohtani. Freddie Freeman signed, I believe, also through the 2027 season. So they could maybe make it work for one season. It's all it would take. One season. Figure out something to do with Vladdy for one season. But if you don't think they are going to explore this, you're out of your mind. Now, what was pointed out to me yesterday when I brought this up to a great colleague of mine was that the Dodgers don't sign players to market value. They figure out ways around signing players in that way. And Vladdy will go for more than his market value. Remember, all these players that they sign for deferrals. They sign for they outlast what the market was. Freddie Freeman, they got him on cheaper than most people thought he would go. Mookie Betts, they signed up for a pretty good deal. Below probably what his market was. I'm not going to discount the Dodgers. All that said, I will not discount them until he is not a Dodger. That's what the Dodgers have done to me psychologically. Just to put into context how good Vladdy has been the past few years, Paul Hembakaitis, tweeted out this is an X's and O's tweet, so I'm just going to get into this. I know I say this is not an X's and O's podcast. This is a little bit more X's and O's. This is a little more nuanced. But most 100-plus miles per hour batted ball. So I'm talking exit velocity here. 2024, Vlad Jr., 215. Shohei Ohtani, 210. 2023 to 2024, Vlad Jr., 396. Juan Soto, 377. 2022 to 2024, Vlad Jr., 607. Shohei Ohtani, 526. 2021 to 2024, Vlad Jr., 818. Aaron Judge, 707. 2020 to 2024, Vlad Jr., 886. Aaron Judge, 729. And he ended off the tweet by saying, it's a $500 million bat. This is going to be another wild offseason next year if he actually reaches free agency. And what I mean by that is, will the Blue Jays try to trade him now when they still have value for him? A mistake the Angels made 2 years ago was not trading Shohei Ohtani for assets before he became a free agent. And with Ohtani, the Angels never had the bad blood of a failed extension attempt. So here you have to think it's a little awkward between the two sides. So should the Blue Jays decide just to trade him now, cut their losses, get something back? Or do they go all in with him this year, one last hurrah, and possibly, and I would say at this point in my mind, probably lose him next offseason? Okay, let's move on. So the other day, the Yankees announced that Giancarlo Stanton could miss opening day. They said he had something that is like tennis elbow on both of his arms, on both of his elbows. Look, the Yankees are no strangers to life without Giancarlo Stanton. In his 7 seasons with the Yankees, he has missed at least 30 games in 6 of the 7. He's missed 50 or more in 4 of the 7. From a health standpoint, it has not been smooth sailing with Giancarlo. That being said, he mashes in the postseason. So as long as you make it there and he is healthy, he makes up for a lot of his missed time come October. I say that, though, knowing that this was the time that they needed Stanton healthy. Now more than ever, they need him. After losing Juan Soto this past offseason, they need all the help they can get offensively. Remember, there were parts of the season last year they were trotting out J.D. Davis as their DH. Yes, they added some bats to replace Soto's value. Goldschmidt, Bellinger. They added Jazz Chisholm at the deadline last year. Let's not forget that they also lost Gleyber Torres. And Gleyber was good for 15 home runs last year. As good as Bellinger and Goldschmidt could be, they really could use the power of Giancarlo's bat and what it's capable of providing. Look, the ceiling of their starting rotation can make up for a lacking lineup. Garrett Cole and Max Fried 2 out of every 5 games gives margin for error. But it may be time to start thinking about life without Giancarlo on a more permanent basis. He has 3 seasons left on his contract. The science of aging hints to more injury concern over those 3 years. I don't see him magically playing 3 full seasons, including this one. Going back to the Vladdy discussion from before, maybe it's time to poke around on that front. Maybe a trade is in order here. And imagine right now, this season, replacing Soto's bat with Vladdy, accompanied by Judge, Bellinger, Austin Wells, etc. So let's see if the Yankees try to pivot here and add a bat before opening day. Or maybe they wait it out until the trade deadline and see what's available then. Okay, let's move on. We have a little more Yankee news here. It's a Yankees day on an early game. And not specifically the Yankees, but has to do with them, that Joe Buck is returning to the baseball booth. And I am pumped about it. ESPN announced yesterday that he will call the opening day matchup between the Yankees and the Brewers. I found it very fascinating how they're handling color commentators. According to The Athletic, Gross is one of the producers or presidents of ESPN. Gross gave him the option of picking his partners. Buck chose Joe Girardi to give the Yankees perspective and Bill Schroeder for the Brewers. I love that. Thank you, Joe Buck. People are not making a big deal out of this, but I think this could change the game for sports broadcasts. This type of thing has been done before where each team gets a color analyst. It is perfection. Both teams feel represented. Joe Buck doesn't need to hear about favoring one team over the other. I think this is going to be excellent, and I will tune in to hear Joe's return. They're saying it's not a full return to the baseball booth. Look, we all see what they're trying to do. Oh, here, come do opening day. Oh, do you mind doing this game too? Oh, do you mind? How about you just return full time, be the number one broadcast? My prediction is by 2026, Joe Buck will be the lead broadcaster for ESPN baseball, for Sunday Night Baseball. Buck was saying how he didn't want to pass up opening day at Yankee Stadium. Okay, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to get him into the booth. Okay, let's move on. We had some NFL news yesterday. We'll move on to the NFL. Andy Dalton agreed to a 2-year deal with the Carolina Panthers. It's $8 million, $6 million guaranteed. I get this move, but I don't. I'll be a little flip-floppy with this take. I get it because Bryce Young is experienced with Andy Dalton being the other quarterback on the roster. So instead of bringing in another player, another personality, you know what you're going to get with Andy Dalton. On the flip side, though, Bryce Young knows Andy Dalton has and can again take his job. We were finally seeing him blossom at the end of last season. I don't want him in the back of his head to think there is a chance Andy Dalton comes for his job with the added bonus of precedent to back it up. I really hope this signing was for the right reasons. Let's have a veteran quarterback on the roster, but this is Bryce Young's team. The fact, though, that they've had Andy Dalton replace Bryce Young in the past is troubling to me. Bryce Young will not forget that. And anytime he makes a mistake, that will creep into his mind. I would love to say, Bryce, don't worry about it. But we know he has had issues in the past. I hope there is a mutual understanding that Andy Dalton there is no way he is going to replace Bryce Young. He is only there for injury. Commit to a full season of Bryce Young without the fear of underperforming and Andy Dalton replacing him. If this is just for the development of Bryce Young, then I can get behind that. But it better not be for ulterior motives, for worse reasons. Okay, that was the NFL news. And finally, let's jump into some hockey. We had a lot of information yesterday for Team USA, for the Four Nations Championship coming up Thursday. I am so pumped. This game is going to be epic. It's going to be sick. But yesterday was a roller coaster of emotions for USA hockey fans. First, it was announced that defenseman Charlie Mccavoy will not play in the championship game on Thursday. He suffered an upper body injury in the game against Canada on Saturday. Then yesterday, he went to the hospital to treat the injury. Man, what a bummer for Team USA. This is the downside of this international play, of taking it so seriously, right? Players don't want to get injured, and that's essentially the reason why they don't give it all they got for a All-Star game. But here in the Four Nations, we saw that these teams want to put it all on the line. Leave it all out there on the ice. And the downside is you end up with the possibility of players going to the hospital. It's easy for me to say that it's worth it, not as a Bruins fan, but I know what it must feel like for them. As a Mets fan, just 2 years ago, Edwin Diaz tore his Achilles celebrating and missed the entire season. I know what it's like to lose your player in international play. Now, maybe it's a little different for the Bruins. You know, they're rooting for America, for USA, and at least they're seeing him go out for that cause, whereas I didn't feel it as much because Edwin Diaz was playing for Puerto Rico, so it didn't mean as much to me for him to be playing in the tournament, but it could mean something for Bruins fans to watch Charlie Mccavoy represent their country. Now, maybe since there are less games in the Four Nation than a regular international tournament, there's less room for failure. There's less time to get injured. So maybe we say, look, you're playing a maximum of 4 games. Let's not worry about it so much. Let's keep our players healthy, but let's let them represent their country. And so after that news came out, Mike Sullivan said earlier in the day that Quin Hughes is in for Thursday night. He is going to be active for the game against Canada. And Quin Hughes, let's just put this into perspective, was the Norris Trophy winner last year. He was the best defenseman in the NHL. So let's just say he would be a worthy replacement for Charlie Mccavoy. However, later in the day, Elliot Friedman tweeted out, Quin Hughes is at Canucks practice. We'll see how this turns out, but Hughes will not join USA unless there's a realistic chance he can play. Canucks' first game is Saturday in Vegas. Doesn't make sense for him to go Vancouver, Boston, Vegas if he can't play Thursday. We will see how this goes, but Quin Hughes playing in this game is massive. A massive difference for the USA. With losing Mccavoy, that is a massive difference, and they have other injury woes, and 2 of those are the Tkachuks, the 2 brothers that took matters into their own hands early in the game on Saturday against Canada. And Emily Kaplan tweeted yesterday, while Charlie Mccavoy has been ruled out for Four Nations final, some good news for Team USA on injury front. I've been reassured that both Tkachuk brothers intend on playing Thursday in Canada. Believe Team USA is talking to league on if they can get injury replacement for Mccavoy. This is going to be an intense game. Team Canada got outmatched, gridded on Saturday. They're going to come out hard. They're going to play physical. And so if Team USA wants to win, they need their two physical bodies. There are two guys that are willing to put their bodies on the line, Brady and Matthew Tkachuk. They need those guys to make this thing work and bring home the Four Nations final championship on Thursday. Okay, that's a show. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you're following on X. Make sure you're following on Spotify. Tomorrow we will talk about anything and everything that happens in sports. Have a wonderful day.